Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. It's not a happy Monday because we still have a Stanley Cup Final going on, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so Peter tells me it's 30th anniversary of the OJ car chase, and it's an unbelievable thing because I don't remember how I found out about it, but I was a devout Knick fan too, right? And all I remember is just watching it, and the Knick game just shrunk in front of my eyes, and there was nothing I could do. And we didn't have high-def TV, and we didn't have a 35-inch TV, and all of a sudden Patrick Ewing went from being a 7-footer to a 3.5-footer. And I just was like, what is going on here? And it was crazy.
That was the hilarious thing, Peter, because I was watching, I'm not a big NBA fan, but I was particularly interested in that series for some reason. And of course, because OJ was played for the Bills for most of his career, the murder of his ex-wife was big news, but nobody really put things together until like maybe the day before when we started to hear that he might be arrested. And then all of a sudden this thing played out on television. And I think everybody at that point had like one of those Sony Trinitron picture-in-picture TVs. So you're used to picture-in-picture, but you're not used to the NBA game, the NBA championship being put in a little window. And that was the thing.
Right.
That in the little window, and they put this friggin' white Bronco on a California highway and people cheering. That was the big thing. But
I was mad. I was actually mad.
It's like, put that in the little window. There's nothing happening.
It's funny because this was, if I remember correctly, 2 or 3 days after the first Vancouver riot, when they lost to the Rangers. I'm glad Jan's not here because I'm still salty 30 years later. Still salty.
I don't want to hear anything about me and Gretzky and Gilmore and that's 31 years and I'm still pissed, but go ahead.
But I was actually, when this all went down, I'd left after that game. I was working. Well, anyway, long story. I was in Eugene, Oregon, seeing the Grateful Dead, and I remember on the 18th, people were talking about this, and we were camping, and in the Elks Field by the Autzen Stadium, and people were staying in motels, were talking about this crazy race, everything that happened. It was absolutely insane. And, it's nuts. But I think if you think about 30 years, one of the things that came out of that trial that I think is so utterly fascinating to tie it in with today's things was the role that paid for sources in journalism started in investigative and criminal stuff. And who was a key player in getting people to talk and finding them? The National Enquirer. And you fast forward 30 years and the role that's played in current political times and recent events, it's very fascinating. It's not a right and wrong. It's more about where we've come from.
Well, there's a right and wrong in there, though.
There's a right and wrong in there, but I'm not. But
I'm going to leave it alone. But it's in
there.
there.
It alone.
You better.
But the point being is, you get these moments in time where you can look backwards and say, 30 years ago, this is what happened. What's happening now, 30 years later, and how do they intersect? This is a very interesting intersecting moment. Well, it's something fun to think about.
The hilarious thing is, I think it was on the Stern Show or some other interview where Kate Hudson was talking about, her stepfather, or actually not real stepfather because they've never been married, but Kurt Russell is her basically her stepfather.
Yeah.
And they live in the area near where OJ was driving, his house. Yeah. And apparently they were like a couple blocks away, and Kurt Russell sort of just bolted out of their house and ran to OJ's house. And he was one of the people that was like lining on the driveway as he was pulling in pulling into the house, which was just bizarre. But I mean, there was just so many. I mean, like I told you, I mean, obviously the trial that happened over the preceding months, and I think it was over a year until the decision.
Yeah, we've talked about the trial before.
The trial, we're not going to go over that, but I just remember in Buffalo, it was a 50-50 split, and Bills fans, because they were fans of football and didn't want to think the worst of him, cheered when it was found not guilty. But anybody who's watched that Oscar-winning documentary, the OJ Made in America, that was on ESPN, and it's still on there if you're an ESPN.
Oh, I wouldn't watch that.
Oh, it's Russ. It's phenomenal in terms of the detail. I mean, I only wanted to watch certain parts of it once because because it was too grotesque. But and I lived through it, so I don't need to keep going back and watching it. But some of the things that were revealed, that basically, it was her and Marcus Allen were having an affair, and that's what threw him over the top, and things of that nature. I mean, it just revealed what a mean SOB he was. And anyway, but yes, this day 30 years ago, we descended it. This gave Geraldo and Nancy Grace and all these.
It's a landmark moment in media history, and media, journalism, and criminal. And, just kind of interesting when it comes around, those big ones. It's not 28, it's 30. So there you go.
It's 30. Yep. The 30th anniversary. And that, boy, Russ, that makes me feel old that was 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes us all feel old.
Yep. All right. Let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, June 17th, 2024.
I'm Pete Tessier, coming at you from beautiful, calm, crystal clear Lake of the Woods, Ontario.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology, still in Jersey.
And NHLDraftBuzz.com.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yes.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I'm gonna get paid for that.
Yeah.
He's gonna buy me a drink in Vegas. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay. Let's start with, and we won't spend too much time on it because it was pretty much over before it started. I mean, it was a very bad start for the Florida Panthers. The Oilers got up early. There was a level of desperation, which, I mean, is understandable, not wanting to be swept. They ran Bobrovsky, not ran him physically, but I mean, ran him out of the game after I think it was 5-1. I mean, Peter, like I said, I mean, you could sort of tell that Florida didn't have it and Edmonton did in spades. And, I mean, the way Florida looked at it after the game, it's like, it's just a game. I mean, it's just a game. We didn't show up. We'll show up in game 5. Maybe subconsciously they're like, well, we want to win it in front of our own home fans. But that's dangerous if you think that way. But what did you think of the game?
Edmonton came out playing desperation hockey like they needed to. I mean, they had no choice. They were either going to fold or they were going to come out like a lion let out of the cage looking at fresh meat. So finally, we got to see it. And I think once Florida realized that there was no coming back, Paul Maurice did something I don't think Knobloch, other than in the Vancouver series, had the stones to do. Managed his goalie well. He didn't let them goon it up either, from what I saw. But I didn't see the end of the game.
A little bit in the third, like they saw.
Okay, a little bit. No, I gotta say, I didn't see the end of the third. So
there was a little message. There was a little message.
Yeah. But you know what? To the Panthers, I think they were out of it at 5-1.
Right.
And why bother messing around?
Yeah, they shut it down.
They shut it down and do your thing and let Edmonton whoop it up, have a good time, and but all it's done is it's effectively said the Oilers have to do something that hasn't been done since I think it's 1942 is the last time someone came down from 3-0.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
42.
Yeah, I think Russ. I even think I saw you cite that, if I remember correctly.
No, it wasn't me.
I
It
did.
wasn't you? Okay.
Because it's
So-
Toronto. It's Toronto. I remember.
Yeah. Anyways,
I was minus 25 years old at that point.
It'll be interesting to see what happens now. Like, how do these teams show up, and who wants to really go for it to like Edmonton has to?
Yeah.
Do they have the ability to do that again? I think that's the question.
Yeah. I think this series is going to be like the Kings Rangers. Rangers lost in 5 in overtime. Now they did it at home. Florida's going to win at home, but that's the only difference here. But I think what'll happen is this next game now will be close again. Florida will have it back together. Bob will have it back together. There won't be a crazy beginning like it was. There won't be a bad call. That was a bad call for the knee on knee to not have a 5-minute power play.
Yeah.
Then have a score, and then that short goal took a lot of starch out of them right at the start. It won't be like that. It won't be weird like that. And I think it'll be a tight game. And I think it probably will be an overtime game. And I think Florida will win. And I think it'll be one of those things where you say, like you did, Edmonton had to show up for at least one of the games. It's hard to sweep a cup. We all felt like it's possible after what we saw, but it's still hard to sweep a cup. And none of us picked the sweep initially.
No.
So, I think that's what it is. And I don't think I could read too much into Edmonton, because even if they won another game, I don't think there's a guarantee they win at home, because I think they're going to run out of gas against Florida. Florida's been beating them up every game, little by little. And you still got word that, hey, Patrick Kane kind of wants to play, but he's not sure. You got a bunch of other guys that are hurt. And every game they're
Vander Kane, not Patrick Kane.
Oh, Vander Kane, sorry. Every game their will is going to get checked. And I think Florida still has more will.
I think Edmonton now is going to say, we can't make a mistake. Like, they had to win that game, but now they have to do it 3 more times and not make mistakes. And that's a hard way to play hockey.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I mean, I picked the series in 6. Russ picked it in 5. We both picked Florida. I think we all thought Florida was going to be the more dominant team. And I mean, 2 of the 3 games that Florida won were relatively close. So I give Edmonton that kind of credit. But I just don't think, and especially with Nurse at less than 100%, Kane not being able to play, and they say Draisaitl is severely hampered by some sort of injury. Now, that's not saying that Florida doesn't have injuries. I guess Bennett Kachuk did not practice today, but it was an off day and they're at home. So
they were giving them off. They're letting them
exactly. So, I mean, everybody's banged and bruised right now. So, but I mean, I expect Florida to finish it off tomorrow. If they don't, then then Edmonton has new life. I mean, is it impossible to come back from 3-0 down? We saw it with Boston, Philadelphia 14 years ago, Russ. So I mean, but that was
being out made it possible.
Right. I was like, the Krejci injury in that series
turned the series.
Yeah.
There has not.
I did. I knew that when it was happening, and you could see it when it was happening. I don't think any injury here has turned the series. But the other thing is, if I'm Maurice, I'm like, listen, I want you guys to go hard, go to the net right away, put a bunch of shots on Skinner from anywhere you can, and if he gives up a bad one, you watch those shoulders go down, because they will. If Edmonton goes down 1-0 off a kind of not a great goal, everything that they built from the last game goes away.
Right.
And to the point of that game, the opening goal came off Skinner getting beat and it going off 2 posts, and then they come back down to score. If that goes in, does that game take a totally different turn?
Right.
Maybe, because Florida still hasn't scored on the power play, right? I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Edmonton finally has, so.
Yeah, I think it was they had killed 35 of the last 37 power plays, something. I mean, if you need an illustration of how important special teams are in the playoffs, look at the penalty killing of Florida and Edmonton and where they got to, and that's an indication. Okay, so let's talk some chatter out there, because the draft is in less than 2 weeks. Free agency he'll start on July 1st, which is 2 weeks from today. So the chatter is starting to move up, and we'll start with Vancouver and Rick Dollawall, who's a pretty damn good reporter and gets a lot of stuff. But now he's reporting sort of secondhand what Elliot Friedman was talking about on, I think, 32 Thoughts. Said that the market for Chris Tanev is going to be very hot. That's not very insightful, but that there was interest in Vancouver bringing Tanev back where he started, but that the market is just going to be too brisk. Now, okay, I've heard that Dallas wants to bring him back, and Dallas has some cap space, but not a ton. And they've got other players now that supposedly want to get Matt Duchene signed. They've got extensions that they want to get. Jason Robertson only has, I think he's eligible for another extension after this season, so July 1st of 2025. They've got guys they want to get locked up long-term, Essa Lindell, Harley. So they're limited in terms of what kind of money they could give Tanev, who's 34 years old.
I don't know. If I choose between Tanev and Duchene, I'm bringing Tanev back.
Right, Russ. But the problem is that Tanev is going to – I think there's a bigger market for Tanev than there is for Duchene. They might be able to get Duchene on a shorter-term deal for more.
Yeah, but they need Tanev more, so I think their focus – they do. That whole series changed when Tanev was out. I think they need Tanev a lot more than Matt Duchene, and I think they'll offer Tanev more than you guys think they're going to. I know, Mike, you think there's a chance in Toronto, and everybody thinks there's a chance at Tanev. I think as smart as Jim Nill has been and Dallas has been, they're going to give him a much better offer than I think that the other teams can actually give them.
I'm not ruling out the possibility that they'll give him a competitive offer, but I'm
not saying competitive. I'm saying blow those other teams out of the water that are slightly interested in him, just like the Leafs, like everybody else, because there's a limit. There's a limit to what those other teams can pay him. Dallas can make it work if they want to.
Yeah, and the thing about you got to remember Tanev is he's 34.
Right.
He needs a contract that's going to be 3 years or 4 years because he won't get one next year. So that's where the bargaining chip is going to be, and it's going to. And I think I agree with Russ that I think Dallas has more ways to make that work than going free agent. A lot of Dallas. You see some comments like Florida's kind of a bandwagon hockey town. A lot of players go down to Dallas, really like it down there, and enjoy the scene, enjoy a lot of what the place has to offer. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tanev's one of those who just says, "Yeah, I can do 3 or 4 years here if they're going to pay me."
I'm not saying that Dallas is a competitive team. They've been in the Final Four 2 years in a row. I picked them to go to the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, I'm not saying that's not an attractive landing spot, and that they'll try their utmost to get Tanev to sign there. I think there are other things at play that I can't say right now, that either he's going to go to Toronto or he's going to go someplace else. I think he wants to taste the market. I think he wants to hit free agency. And once July 1st rolls around, then Dallas is going to have to scramble to find, if they can't get him locked up, then they're going to have to find somebody else that they can get signed. I mean, Hakanpää, another free agent. He was hurt during the playoffs. He's been effective for them. Somebody that they might sign, and they could get it for a lot lower of a cap hit. Russ, I have heard the possibility of them buying out Ryan Suter the last year of his contract. But he was still pretty effective in the playoffs. But if they need to open up like $3 million in cap space if it's to accommodate Tanev, that they might do that. But
I'll ask Jim Nill at the draft. I'll see him. I see him every draft. He's a straight shooter. Yeah. I get quotes from him every draft, and I guarantee you he'll be honest about it. He won't give it definitive, but I bet you I'll have an idea of how much their interest is in him.
I'll bet you anything he'll say, well, we want to sign him.
Yeah, but he usually goes a little more than that. If they want him, he'll say a little bit more than that.
Yeah, he may use the word our intention is to sign him, right? And if it doesn't, it's not because he didn't try.
Right.
And
Now,
and that's the kind of thing that's refreshing from a GM who sort of says that, right? It builds trust with fans, because there's nothing worse than saying, well, we'd like to keep the player. If you sound wishy-washy, like,
I'm trying to think who it was 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Was it who did they have to sign 2 years ago?
who
Heiskanen. It wasn't Heiskanen. It was maybe Robertson.
Maybe it was Robertson. And when I spoke to Nil with like 3 other people, I could tell it was going to get done based on the way he said it, because I've just known him a long time. Right. So that's the way I'm going to treat it this time too. See how he talks about it.
We'll find out at the draft. The other things that Friedman reported, that Rick Dallowall quoted, on Dakota Joshua, there's going to be a good market for guys like him. Canucks want to keep him, but the market has gone higher for him. Canucks are facing the possibility of losing him. Now, Joshua, like I said, he's made himself into a player. I'm sure, Tocchet has helped that out. He's gotten the opportunity in Vancouver. He's scored in the teens in goals the last 2 seasons after basically, being thrown on the scrap heap by Toronto, going to St. Louis, not getting a great chance. He's turned himself into a pretty good player, and teams are looking for size and speed and that physicality that a big guy like Joshua can bring. Peter, I think he's going to probably in free agency. He's 28 years old. I think he's going to get $3 million a year. He's going to get like a 3-year, 4-year deal at $3 million. And, based on what Vancouver is trying to do, they're trying to get Lindholm signed. That doesn't sound like that's going to happen. They can't. And Besser's got 1 year left in his deal. They can't sign a Joshua for $3 million.
No, and I think that's always been the problem. And I think what the report that Dhaliwal was citing out of Friedman is there's going to be a lot of interest in these guys, and the same with Zadorov as well. And that's just the nature. You have some success. You've got some players out there that have been pseudo role players and maybe a little more. Other teams want them. They're hard to find, and when you identify them, the vultures come in. Vancouver is always going to have a impending cap problem. Right. And, it was known in the Benning time, it's been, Alvin has managed it well, but eventually it comes to roost, right? And now it's sort of coming where the guys you never expected to sort of step up and be this meaningful or you trade for are, and what do you do? Because now everyone wants them. It'll be interesting, but, stranger things have happened too when things have changed, and sometimes a player wants to stay where they are and works it out. I think for these guys, they're going to go where the money is. Yeah, no, I mean, Vancouver was facing a situation where they had to give Kuzmenko $5.5 million, and then they traded him because they couldn't, to get Lindholm, they had to clear that money out. Yeah. Now, they paid Quinn Hughes. They're in a pickle with Roenick. Zadorov, from what everybody is reporting, he's going to get at least $5 million, maybe closer to $6 million. That takes him out of the market. But they're going to sign Tyler Myers because Tyler Myers, and then I know that you're just shaking your head there, Peter, because you don't think. I mean, it depends on what they're going to get Tyler Myers for. If it's $3 million, fine, but it might be more than that, and you're not getting a lot for your buck there. The sweet smell of 2 series where Tyler Myers played competently is not the aroma you want going into free agency with him. Someone give Alvin some smelling salts and snap him out of it. I think that's going the wrong direction. You've got to look at age gap. You've got to look at other things too. For Vancouver to sign Tyler Myers again, he needs to be a 5'6" and paid accordingly like one, not still riding reputation and such. You've got to let go of things and say, well, if Tyler can play like this for the next 3 years and we can get him at 3, it's a real bargain. Yeah. What if he doesn't? He won his Calder 13 years ago. Right?
So,
and it's sort of been like this ever since.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
That's not true. That's not true.
That's
He
not
had
true.
actually some good seasons in Winnipeg and stuff, and I'm just being hard on him because I think
He's been effective enough that teams still want him.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Tyler Myers is that you're expecting something to come back to what he looked like in his Calder season, and it's never returned, not to the scale. And it's unfair to think that that's going to happen again, or that you're going to sort of get the $3 to $4 million of value out of him. Like, I honestly think, like, Mike, I would not be surprised if Vancouver gave him a 3-year, $4 million deal.
Yep.
That's too much.
Yeah.
If it's at the expense of other players. But again, that's how I look at things. Doesn't mean that's the right way of looking at them.
Now we'll go closer to you, Peter, with the news. The Jets hired Dean Chenoweth, former assistant coach of the Maple Leafs under Sheldon Keefe, and Davis Payne, former head coach of the Blues, if I'm correct, as the assistants to Scott Arniel. Chenoweth has a history of working well with defenders. He was the assistant coach primarily assigned to the Leafs defense. I was told that his role was diminished this year based on with the Leafs as opposed to previous seasons.
Yeah.
But he's got a reputation of being an excellent assistant coach.
I don't know much about him. The word I heard on Payne is he was with Ottawa recently, and he had been running their power play that took him from 31st up to 8th, not last season, but the season before. I can't remember whose tweeted that out. It was someone out of the Winnipeg media, I believe. And I think that's interesting because Lord knows the Jets really need some help on the power play. It's really ugly. And changes, I think change is good to bring some outside thinking and stuff into the coaches thing. I'm glad, while Arniel may not be outside thinking, I'm glad he's thinking outside of traditional links back to the organization of sort of ownership, approved people in terms of stuff, or legacy Winnipeg connections, and that's a good thing. One of the things that a lot of people in Winnipeg really appreciate about Arniel is when Bones had to take his leave of absence for some health issues. They really liked what he did with some of the lines and wasn't afraid to change some things and try some things, and when it worked, he didn't just revert back to it. And then when Bones came back, he kind of went back to what he was comfortable with. And there was a lot of talk around Winnipeg about people wanting to see Arniel's vision on some things, even though Bones was the coach. Like, go back to what he did. It didn't happen. So I'm sort of excited about this. The big question, I think, for everyone in the audience is there's still no clear indication of what's going to happen with Nick Ehlers.
Right.
And that's a big trade chip for the Jets. Affordable contract for one more year, and a guy who maybe hasn't been used the best in Winnipeg, who could really light it up on the right team.
Yeah, and that's the question. What do they expect to get back for Ehlers? I mean, are they expecting prospect draft pick? Are they expecting a hockey trade? What do you think that they're looking for?
Man, that's the one thing no one seems to have a finger on, Mike, of anyone in Winnipeg media. I really haven't seen anything. Now, Tony just posted Ehlers to Carolina for Necas. That has been floated around for a bit.
I don't think Carolina would do it.
I
think Carolina would do it. I don't think Necas would like it.
I don't think Necas would like it, but I don't think Carolina would do it because I think there is a malaise right now with Ehlers. Like, what is he? What's he actually going to do?
Well, here's the one rumor that came out, that there's a certain player on the Jets that has a bit of a say on who's on his line.
I wonder who that is.
Yeah. And so Ehlers never really got up there. So, again, rumor.
It still doesn't mean
I think
on another line. Like, he should be better. He should be better at this point.
But he's had a rotating cast of centers. It's been a challenge. I do think they would be looking for defense, and then if you, depending on the quality of the defense, the quality of the player, you would have to either, it would be supplemented one way or another, right? If there was a top two defenseman out there who wanted a, was trade bait, and it was an equal trade, I could see that getting done, but I could see it being sweetened one way or the other depending on the quality.
Yeah, they would have to sweeten it, Winnipeg, because it's hard to imagine a top two center being out there that.
Or no, it's defenseman, not center.
Defenseman.
I agree, Russ.
I
don't know who that player is. I think that's where they'd like to go, because it's kind of like you have Morrissey and you have a lot of threes, but you don't have another two. You don't have a true two.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Ehlers is going to bring it to. Like, that's the problem. A two in this league is worth more.
I don't think so either, but man, stranger things.
But a lot of teams are.
We live in a world where Darnell Nurse makes $9 million a year.
Just to touch on a couple things in the chat here. Tony says Canucks are trying to dump Mikheyev, $4.75 million this year and next year, and he's turned into the Mikheyev previous to the year he scored 20.
Yeah, he did. You were right about that.
I told you. I mean, I love the guy's effort. First of all, he had problems staying healthy, and then he stepped up in that big year and got, I think it was 21 goals, and that got him the relatively big money for him. And he's never been that player since. Randy says Lindholm wants $8 to $9 million. He's gonna get it.
I wouldn't pay it to him.
I wouldn't pay him either, Russ. But I think somebody.
It's not because, like, it's more about, I think he's hit his offensive ceiling. What was his high? Like 80 points. That was with Gaudreau. He's not getting that again.
That was with Gaudreau and Kachuk.
Right. He's never getting that again.
No.
Never ever. He will never have a line like that again.
No, but I think he'll get close to that. If he goes to, say, Boston, he might have to take like $500,000 less, like 7.5. But he's going to get close to that, because this market for center. I'm going to tell you right now, Chandler Stevenson, who was written about in the X blog today, Chandler Stevenson with 2 Stanley Cups, and in 2023 when they won the cup, he had 20 points in the playoffs. He's going to get $5 million.
He's not getting 5.
Okay, I think. What do you think he'll get? I think he's going to get 5.
He'll get 4, 4.5. I think he was an aberration. He's never been that guy since that playoff.
He still had. I think he still had 60 points this year. I mean,
60. I didn't think he had that many.
I'll double check. But
if he had 60, then you're right. He'll get 5.
Yeah,
I thought he had less than that.
Somebody can look it up in the chat while I'm just trying to.
Yeah, Mike's got Buffalo internet. Spectrum.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. We see these guys, they spend all their money on friggin' commercials. They get the actors from Mission Impossible.
Right.
What
did they cost?
Okay, he had 64 points in 2022, 65 points in 2023. He dropped to 51 this year.
Right. 51, I think, is what Chandler Stevenson is now.
Right. Well, I mean, he was playing number.
I'm not giving him 5 personally. You might be right, though. You might, but I would only give him 4.
I think the market will generate that. Now, Peter, do you get the feeling, because Tony is saying he thinks that Roenick is gone in Vancouver? Do you think that? I mean, is that a situation where they can't get him on a long-term deal, or is this a negotiation where they think they can like wear him down to get him to take like a Devin Taves type of amount?
I honestly don't know. There's so much Vancouver really is. It just doesn't get the airplay out east as much. It really is very similar to Toronto in the amount of media and attention it has, and there's a lot of noise out there. I honestly don't know. I think there's a little bit of grinding going on, but the guy could get paid, right? And they don't want to pay him to what the open market is. And it's like, you're a good fit here. Didn't have the best postseason, but he's a good fit. So why don't you stay? And I think it's that dance that's going on, but you never know, right? I just don't know. I don't have a pulse on that one.
Yeah.
If what the intentions are with the Canucks and how they're looking at it. Like, obviously, they don't want to pay much, but is it the right way to go?
The Brendan Dillon rumors to Vancouver have been thick.
I do want to mention one other thing. So this is the other thing that got me, Mike, with Stevenson. 1 assist in 7 games, -3 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's a far cry from,
From 20 points the year before. Yeah. He was in a third line role instead of a second line role like he was. I mean, he
still should have had more than that.
He was playing with Stone in 2023. He wasn't playing with Stone.
But that's the thing. I think he got Stone bumped.
He was very effective, and other teams might think, okay, well, he was playing in a third line role and a non-scoring role, and that's what he did. So Brendan Dillon to Vancouver has been a rumor out there for a little while. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition. I have not heard this about Giordano wanting to come back for another year. If he's wanting to come back for another year, it's probably not going to be in Toronto. His usage late in the season. Now, it's not impossible. We don't know what Berube is going to want to do, but his usage dropped with Keith at the end of the year after the concussion. He didn't play in the play. I don't think he played a game in the playoffs. Maybe he'd go back to Calgary to finish off his career. I don't know. But he's from the Toronto area. I don't know if he's going to want to continue. He's not going to get paid very much wherever he wants. I mean, it's, these guys, some of these guys like Chelios, they just want to keep playing. It doesn't matter about the money, but we'll see. Russ, Darren Drager and I'm writing about this right now. Darren Drager in his morning radio hit on Toronto radio said, and I quote, "The Leafs are well, I want to get let me see. I want to get the quote exactly right here. 1 second here. Let me just
yes, it's the Leafs. We can't possibly.
No,
we can't go with conjecture on the Leafs.
No, I'm all about accuracy. No. I'm all about accuracy when it comes to quoting somebody else. He said that he thinks Drager. He thinks that Brad Treliving would rather extend the All-Star winger than trade him. Okay. So that's his feeling as of June the 17th. That tells me, and this is what I'm writing, this tells me one of a couple things. One, the Leafs have shopped him. They've received calls on him, and they don't like the level of offers that they're getting for him. Now, teams, if they perceive they don't want him, they know they got him painted into a corner. They know that, Toronto doesn't want him, so we can offer him a bag of pucks, and they're going to, that's all we're going to offer him. Okay, well, he has to say, well, yeah, we're open to extending him rather than trading him. It's sort of like, I mean, Russ, am I off base here? You have to sort of, if you're saying we definitely want to trade him, you're not going to get the offers.
No, I think you're partially right, but I also think he's not going anywhere right now. He's not. I believe he will start the season in Toronto. I don't think you're wrong. I think he has to say what he's saying to kind of show interest. But I think they probably already have a good idea that Mitch Marner doesn't want to go anywhere. So I think that's the only route he could take is to do that and then see what happens during the season, see if he has to trade him during the season, and he probably won't.
It's got to be done. Like with Nylander, if he gets moved, it's going to be before the season. Once you get to training camp, it's actually, I think the window, Peter, when it comes to Marner, is probably between now and maybe the 10th of July, when everybody has spent their money, because if you're going to have that initial rush where teams are going to be looking to sign free agents and not give up anything for guys to fill certain spots. Those teams that strike out in free agency, then they'll say, let's go the trade route. Toronto wants to make a hockey trade for Marner. They want to get some assets back for him. The cap space is valuable because then they can sign free agents. But you can't go out and sign free agents and go 10% over the cap unless you know for sure that you're going to be able to trade Marner. So Toronto, it needs to find out. All the reports are saying right now, Friedman, Drager, LeBrun, they're all basically saying the same thing, that the Leafs are out there shopping. If they get an offer that they like, then they would take that to Marner and say, would you go here? At that point, Peter, if he says, no, I'm staying in Toronto, then it gets ugly.
So if that's the process that Treliving is going through or using, 100K, I will solve your negotiating process. Just 100K. That's all I ask.
That's your price being an advisor to the NHL and to the Leafs.
100K.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
I don't ask a lot. Just simple. You should see what I'm looking at. I got a bit of a deck problem I got to deal with. The process with that is you need to Treliving's in a tough position.
Mm-hmm.
He's inherited some problems. He's inherited a roster. He's inherited contracts, but he also has to gain trust in the process.
Right.
How he approaches this is around what kind of trust he's built with the players and their representatives. So for Treliving to go and say he needs to have that talk with Marner, if Marner's the guy that he wants to deal with in terms of getting out, he needs to solve that before he goes out first. Going out and then coming back is never a good thing. You want to know exactly what the player wants, where he's comfortable, the kinds of things. You want his agent to buy in. You want everything. A person who is motivated from being respected and heard is far more likely to agree to something than someone who is having something thrust upon them. It's sales 101, tell you the honest truth.
Yeah.
And in that case, Treliving's got to do with it. He's also got the bonus issue he's got to deal with Marner's salary, if I remember correctly, too.
Yeah. And
when does that get paid? July 1st?
July 1.
Okay.
That's why I think that the possibility of him being traded after the draft, after July 1st, the Leafs have paid, I think it's $7.5 million bonus. So that increases it.
If I'm Treliving right now, I'm talking to Marner in his camp, and I'm going out to wherever he hangs out with now, whether it's in Muskoka, if he's wherever it is. And I'm coming out there. I'm not letting what's his face drive the boat, the guy from Shark Tank, and I'm just coming up nice and easy.
Maybe Kevin Leary, that
Kevin
idiot?
O'Leary, that idiot, yeah. And I'm not doing a bad commercial with Chris Pronger either. And we're gonna sit down and just chat and say, what do you want for your future? And if you want, and that's the conversation. And you've got to have something so you understand with the players. He holds all the cards, so he can't. He's got to respect that and make sure that Marner is hurt. He's got to stroke his ego. He's got to stroke the parents' ego. He's got to stroke the agent's ego. He's got a lot of.
All right, so I'm going to play Mitch Marner.
Well, he holds most of the cards, but let me just say this, and then you can be Mitch.
Okay.
He holds most of the cards. If he does what he at the end of the season said he wanted, which is I want to stay in Toronto, and the talking point that came out of the combine when Treliving talked to Darren Ferris was his intention is to play out the rest of his contract. Okay, he plays out the rest of his contract and he stays in Toronto. He costs himself between $10 to $12 million because he will only get a 7-year contract in free agency. I'm convinced that they will not go down the road that they went with Nylander, because Nylander went into the final year, had the big year, and then put the sort of pressure on the Leafs, and the Leafs said, damn, we got to sign Nylander now, and they signed him for 8 years. I don't think they're going down that road. I do not think they will sign Mitch Marner to a long-term extension. It's either he gets traded or this is the last year in Toronto, because Treliving wants to remake this team more in the image that he wants to, and Mitch Marner is not part of this. Now, go ahead.
So, okay.
All right, so here's what if I'm Mitch Marner, basically I'm saying, hey, Brad, these are the two things I want. I want to be a Leaf for life, or I'm going to test free agency. Are you going to pick up this bill? And that's it, and I'm leaving.
Okay, so then he said,
That's
okay,
it.
wait. You want to be a Leaf for life? Okay, we'll offer you $9 million a year times 8 years.
Okay, let me think about that. I'll bring it back, talked about it with my camp. I'll let you know, and we'll let you know.
If he says I want to be a Leaf for life, then I don't even start at 9. It starts with a 7, and I insult him, because Mitch Marner's value is only tied to as well as the Leafs done.
No, that's
put
fine. But
himself
if you
So
insult
he
them,
sticks around next year. The Leafs squeak into the playoffs in a 6th position.
Oh, they'll make the playoffs.
Well, yeah, let's just say they do. And they go out again in round 1. And Mitch and Mitch is typical Mitch. He just lowered his value.
Yes.
There is so much stain on him
right
now because of the machine that's in Toronto, the venom of the fans, the media, the everything, the stats, you name it. He gets out now, he's got a chance for a real payday.
Right.
He sticks around another season, he's either going to be a Leaf for life, way less than Nylander, because I wouldn't pay him the same as Nylander, not because he's maybe not worth it, but because you're handcuffing yourself again, and that cap can be deployed elsewhere. Right. So Trey Living's sitting there, and he goes, "Okay, you want to go free agency? You won't let me trade you at the deadline to get a shot at a cup or whatever it is."
I didn't say I wouldn't let you trade me at the deadline.
No, but he's got all the cards.
He's got more value now, Russ. And at the deadline,
he doesn't want to get traded now.
At the deadline, if I'm Trey Living, he's got all the cards on where he can get traded to because of his clause. So the point being is, you know what? I'll eat you with mustard, and you go figure out your life there.
That's fine.
Because if I'm Trey Living, I didn't sign that deal. And all Trey Living has to do is say, we have contingency plans if Mitch Marner does not want to maintain a contract and play for the Maple Leafs. And we feel that there's a better option of using that $10.3 million.
The problem with this tack, Pete, is he's going to be like, fine, thanks for the offer. I'm going to just ride out the season, and you're not going to get anything. He'll worry about it in free agency. He's going to make money.
You get 10.3 for next year.
Here is my theory. What this is, because this is being played out in the press. We know, Drager, Friedman, LeBrun, they all deal with sources. We don't know where the sources are, but my impression is this source is coming from the club. Is that okay? They put it out there that they're willing to extend rather than trade. So okay, then they go to Ferris and say, well, okay, we're open to signing, offering him an extension. Okay, what's the extension? Okay, we'll go 8 years at, like you said, Peter, 8 years, and I'll say $9 million, because I think even they would perceive that $9 million is an insult. It's not an insult compared to other players, but he, in his previous negotiation, wanted to get as close to Matthews as possible, and he will at least want to get as much or more than Nylander. So if they offer him $9 million, Ferris will come back and basically tell them to go F themselves. Yeah. And then the Leafs will basically say, well, we offered him an extension. He didn't want to do it. And now he's cock blocking us because he doesn't want to accept an extension. We offered him an extension, and he doesn't want to waive his no move clause. He will be public enemy number one in Toronto. It will be a year of misery. I don't care.
He cares, Mike. We're just back.
No, he does, Russ. He's
I think he does.
There.
I think he does, and I think Mike's got a good point in this. Is that they can drop his minutes. They can do all.
If you drop your minutes, the team's going to suck. They're not going to do that.
The team hasn't made it past the first round.
The problem is the team's in a mess anyways because
but they're a playoff team, Pete. Go name me a guy that they dropped the minutes on, and all of a sudden he went, okay, trade me. That doesn't happen.
Mike Commodore.
Mike Commodore. Okay.
Jeff Skinner.
I meant a real player.
Jeff Skinner.
Yeah, Jeff Skinner.
They lowered him to a fourth line winger.
Fourth line, but didn't cut his minutes.
A coach can make life real miserable for a player if he wants to.
Sure, but then he's gonna hurt his team.
It can be deployment. But if the team, what I'm saying is you might as well find out what your team's like in a limited role with Mitch Marner, if that's the case, if he's not going to sign, because you're going to be filling the hole the year after.
Listen, I'll tell you this: Treliving's not going to talk about signing him if he knows he's trading him. He doesn't know if he can get him traded. That's the problem.
Russ, I think you're wrong. I think what the reason if he is the one, or if the club is the one that floated this, they're basically saying these other teams that think that they got us over a barrel because they think we want to trade them, we have to pretend at least that we're willing to keep them and that we're willing to extend them. If they perceive that we're painted into a corner and we have to trade him, they're not going to offer anything close to what we want in a deal. But
it's shaping up just like Johnny Gaudreau, exactly like it.
Well, I honestly, I think
it's the same guy involved.
No.
So how's that worked out for Gaudreau?
Wasn't Treliving there for Gaudreau or not?
Oh, Treliving was there for Gaudreau.
Yeah, it's the same guy.
Oh, and then how's that work?
It wasn't the same.
But he got his money, Pete.
It wasn't the same.
Oh
yeah, and he's enjoying it in friggin' Columbus, where
he got his money.
Okay.
He's not unhappy.
I don't think Marner is as motivated by the dollar. Gaudreau has a different sort of view on the world, I think.
Well, Gaudreau did have a chip on his shoulder.
Marner has a little bit of savioritis in this. He wants to be a part of the solution.
I think money is a definite money in terms of a sign of respect is a big motivator.
Well, the money comes after, right? The money is close behind. I'm not saying it's not an issue. My point is, if this is the level that we can get to around Marner,
right,
then he's more of a problem on the team than he is off. And that's what Treliving has to think about. Man, you got your coach fire, you've inherited Dubas's handiwork and a little bit of legacy of what's-his-face of Mike's favorite GM as well. You got your free coach fire, you got rid of Keefe. Now you're gonna get a free trade of something big. You've got to look out there and understand exactly what you're doing, because he can screw this up with Marner. And if Marner walks for nothing, he's still got 10.3 million options to deal with something.
Yeah, but it's still not going to be
good for him as it stands right now.
If he walks for nothing, it's still not going to be good for Treliving either, even though it's not his guy. It doesn't matter.
No, Russ,
it's not good. But it's not the worst thing that ever happened, as long as he shows an honest effort.
Russ, it won't be on Treliving because Marner will be blamed.
Mike, Marner, you're forgetting they hired.
No, I'm not forgetting. Russ,
you're forgetting that.
No, I'm not forgetting anything. He's got a no movement. This is Matt Sundin 2.0. It's exactly.
They're going to say, "Good job, Brad." Is that what you're telling me?
No, he was powerless, Russ, because
he's not powerless. He's got to. There is a way to get it done.
If a player's got a no movement clause and he exercises that to not go anywhere, how is it the fault of the general manager?
He's got to persuade him. That's his job to persuade him.
Okay. Yeah.
But that is his job to persuade him, whether it's a sign and trade for like $3 million more. Then hold on.
I'm sure he's trying to do that.
Well, but that's part of his job. And if he doesn't do it, whether it's his fault or not, it still happened while he was GM. And it still gets attached to him, Mike. That's the way it works.
Russ, I'm saying if the player is intent on staying.
I know what you're saying. You think he's the first player to ever do this? Well, you're acting like he's the first player to ever do this.
But it's unfair to blame the general manager for the player being intransigent.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think Brad Treliving looks great in the end result after everybody left Calgary. I mean, I'm just going to say I don't think it looked good for him.
Look. I don't think Treliving was the hire the Leafs should have made. That's what they have. So here he is. He's got a couple opportunities. I think, you know what? At the end of the day, after next season, he's got no Tavares, and he either has no Tavares, no Marner, or he has one of the two.
I think he has Tavares at a much lesser cap hit, and they've traded Marner, but we'll see. I want to finish with this. Russ, Larry Brooks in his Slap Shots column wrote that he believes that the end is near for Barclay Goodrow, that the Rangers will buy him out of the final years of his contract after being a playoff hero and scoring.
It doesn't matter. I think he's right, Mike, and I think that's what I thought they should do, because honestly, like, Tampa will pick him up in 5 minutes, right? We all know that. But
unless they trade him, and I did write that, the contract I think is $3.6 million. A team like Buffalo
could use a guy like that.
Yeah, who's got a lot of cap space. They could get him relatively cheap.
Knows how to win. That guy in the locker room. I agree with you. I just think the Rangers do have to get rid of him because it's not that he can't play hockey. Of course he can play hockey, but for the dollar allocation for what he does, it's just not worth it. It's just not.
Yeah, there was we'll talk about this on Wednesday. There was a column in the Athletic that they were speculating about a dozen players who might get bought out. And one of them was Goudreau. The one that they didn't list I still think is a 50-50 shot of Buffalo buying out Jeff Skinner, because Skinner's a $9 million cap hit the next 3 years. His production dropped from 35, I think, to 24 this year. He's lost a step. He's smaller. They have guys that they want to sign into long-term extensions I just don't know the fit of Skinner in Buffalo with Lindy Ruff.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. I think you're right. But let me ask you this. I mean, why would Columbus buy out Goudreau? Do they want to be the worst team in the league again?
Who said that?
I thought you mentioned Goudreau. Barkley. Still Barkley.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were still mentioning Barkley after we mentioned Barkley. Got it.
Yeah. No, Barkley Goudreau. No,
okay.
Not Johnny. Not Freddie.
All
right.
Freddie.
Okay. No, or Freddie. Yeah. All right. We'll be back on Wednesday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast, hopefully to celebrate a Stanley Cup victory. You can't tell who I'm rooting for the sunning Pete Tessier in Lake Country for Russ Cohen. Yeah, for Russ Cohen in suburban New Jersey. And this is Michael Agello in beautiful downtown Cheektowaga. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.